Tell you what happened on Christmas Day, 1914, and people don't believe it. We had this unofficial truce. And we met in no man's land on Christmas Day, 1914. And we shook hands, they were Saxons. And I heard one fellow talking English. I said to him, "You speak English?" You know what he said? "Oh, blimey, mate," he said, "I was in the London Hotel when the war broke out."
On Christmas Eve at noon, fire ceased completely on both fronts. Of course, it was unusual that the opposite side also ceased fire. Then my officer controlling the sentries came in and said, "Do you expect a surprise attack? Because it's very unusual, the situation." I said, "No, I don't think so." But anyhow, everybody is awake, nobody sleeping, and the sentries are still on duty. I think it's all right.
We were in the front line. We were about 300 yards from the Germans, and we had, I think, on Christmas Eve, we'd been singing carols and this, that, and the other, and the Germans had been doing the same, and we'd been shouting to each other, sometimes rude remarks, more often just joking remarks. Anyway, eventually a German said, "Tomorrow you no shoot, we no shoot."
We heard a German singing Holy Night, of course in German, naturally. Then after he'd finished singing, there was all sorts of Christmas greetings being shouted across no man's land to us. These the Germans, they shouted out, "Well, what about you singing Holy Night?" Well, we had a go, but of course we wasn't very good at that.
Later on in the night, there was a great deal of commotion going on in the German front line, which was about 150 yards away, I suppose. And after a few moments, there were lighted objects raised above the German parapet. The Germans were shouting over to our trench. There's no doubt about that at all. And before we could take any action or do anything, we were ordered to open rapid fire, you see, which we did. The Germans did not reply to our rapid fire. They simply carried on with their celebrations.
I remember very well Christmas. I remember the Christmas day when the German and the French soldiers left their trenches, went to the barbed wire between them with champagne and cigarettes in their hands, and had feelings of fraternization and shouted they wanted to finish the war. And that lasted only 2 days, 1.5 really, and then strict order came that no fraternization was allowed, and we had to stay back in our trenches.
When we were holding the line at Saley, Christmas 1914, there was a bit of a truce there, you know, and the Germans stopped firing, we stopped firing, and we came out of the line and they came out of the line, and we were swapping tins of bully for their tins of meat, and the padre was out having a talk with them, and they were burying any dead that was there, and we were burying any dead, and this carried on for about a couple of days.
Keith and Philip Ridley, two of my section, came dashing into the billet during the morning and said, "What do you know? The Jerrys are out on the top. They're walking about. They're dishing out drinks and cigarettes. There's no fighting going on." Well, we'd noticed the place was very quiet. So Keith and Philip and Leslie Wood went off, and they arrived back round about lunchtime. They'd had drinks, they'd had smokes, and they'd been walking about. He said, just wouldn't believe it.
There was a mass of people there. It appeared from somewhere, and I didn't know where. It came from their side. It was a proper football, yes. And they kicked it about. They made goals, and one fellow went in goal, and then it was a general just kick about.
We got orders to come down the trench. Get back in your trenches, every man. By word of mouth, down each trench. Everybody back in your trenches, you know, and shouting. The generals behind must have seen it and got a bit suspicious. So what they did, they gave orders for a battery of guns behind us to fire and a machine gun to open out, you know, and officers to fire their revolvers at the Jerrys, you know. Of course that started the war again. Oh, we were cursing them to hell, cursing the generals and that. You want to get up here in this stuff. Don't mind your big giving orders and your big shot-alls and driving about in your big cars. We hated the sight of bloody generals.
Although it would be arrogant to say that the thing didn't actually take place, I very much doubt whether anything of the nature or magnitude that has been claimed for it took place at all. And particularly because the two armies concerned, the German with that rigid discipline, and our own with the finest discipline of a fighting force there was, are not likely to break that tradition. And if anybody tried, what are the NCOs doing? What are the officers doing? I think the whole thing borders on the fairy tale.
This runner came along when I was on this fatigue job, and so you're wanted again to interpret. I said, what is it this time? He said, well, there's a drunk German in our trenches and he won't go back. So I went up there, I saw a platoon officer there, and he said, Williams, there's this chap here. He says, he's drunk. He said, I don't mind, it's all very well to meet them in no man's land, but he's actually in our trenches. Anyway, this chap was standing over a couple of bottles of beer and wanting us to drink the health of the new year and all the rest of it. So eventually, the officer detailed another chap and me to take him back. So he escorted there, one on each side, and this chap staggering about and singing at the top of his voice. We got up to the German wire, and I thought, well, I don't think I'll go right into their trenches. They might not be as lenient as we are. Anyway, we found a gap in the wire and headed him in the right direction and left him to it.